what I'm presenting to you here today is pretty much all false advertising, or at least the framing of it is all false. See, you might think that I would make something like this when I've just celebrated a milestone birthday. Say I had just turned 30, but I haven't. I'm 34. I guess, missed the boat on making a reflection on the lessons I learned in my 20s when I actually turned 30, and I had to do it a full 4 years late. Also, you might think that I'd kind of done like 20 things I learned in my 20s. Instead, I'm giving you 6 things I think I've learned in my 20s that I would maybe do differently were I to go back. The first lesson, I think, I gotta like build it up a little bit with a little bit of like context. When I was in my early to mid 20s, certainly maybe even edging into my late 20s, what I wanted more than anything, and the topic that absolutely preoccupied and obsessed me, was the desire to get into a romantic relationship. I wanted a boyfriend more than you could possibly imagine, and I was not having a lot of luck getting one. And not too long ago, I decided to, like, just for fun, go back through my journals from when I was, let's say, 20, 21, I think. And what I found in those journals shocked me. Now, I'd known that I would find a lot about like me analyzing my interactions with various guys I had crushes on during that time. And indeed, like that was about, I would say, 75% of the journal entries. But then the other 25% was pretty much like straight up self-loathing, and also particularly loathing of my appearance. Like every few lines, I'd be like, well, yes, I really like him, but ultimately I am too ugly for him to ever look at me. I am hideous. I am unbearably, unforgivably hideous, and therefore I will never find love. Think about what all that self-loathing did to my confidence. I just wish that I had had a little bit more self-respect, and like I wish that I hadn't fallen so deeply into like this societal conditioning of what like the perfect appearance is, and I wish that I hadn't allowed that to like sink so deeply into the way that I thought of myself, and like basically like make me just utterly and completely hate my appearance for like so many years of my life. And like I'm still not out of the woods here. Like I am definitely still like, I still look in the mirror like several times a week and I'm like, oh, that could be improved. And like, you know, I still have plans like, oh my God, if I ever get rich, here are the procedures I would have done. Like I still think that way. Like I'm not perfect here, but I would say tone down the self-loathing. Like just tone it down. Like you can still feel that you are not perfect, but like just one notch down. Just one notch down. Hi. So I had an audio glitch making the next few minutes basically unusable. Here I am coming to you from a new day, new location, new shirt. And let's try it again with the introduction to my lesson number 2, which is numerical targets for success. And particularly numerical targets for success in anything that's supposed to be a pleasurable activity are, and I am not being dramatic, evil. They will ruin your quality of life. And now the first time I noticed these numerical targets seeping their way into my consciousness was when I got the idea from somewhere online that you should be reading 50 books a year. And now like this 50 book target was like, okay. I mean, like, it's something that I probably could achieve without straining myself too much. However, what I learned in doing this 50 book challenge thing is that as soon as I became able to read 50 books in a year, the goalposts kept shifting. It shifted towards then maybe 60 books, 70 books. And it's like, where does it stop? Like, how did I internalize this like really like capitalist mentality of like endless growth? And how did I start applying it to my personal life, my pleasure activities? It was terrible. And then as I'm reading along, I find myself thinking to myself, as kind of a parallel to the reading comprehension, I would also be thinking, okay, so like if I read this amount today and if I read this amount tomorrow, I should be on track to finish this book by my goal of the end of this week. And then I should be able to move on to the next book. I wonder what the next book will be. I wonder how quickly I can finish that one. It basically like tanked my reading retention. Like to this day, like sometimes someone will like ask me a question about a book like that goes deeper than did you like it? And I just will like have no recollection. I'll know I read it because I'll have it on my list of books completed in a certain year, but like what did I read about? Like who were the characters? What was the plot? I don't know. And then like also on the question of numerical targets, like I have found this numerical target setting seeping into so many other areas of my life as well. For example, I a few years ago got indoctrinated into the you must take 10,000 steps every day target. And that one, let me tell you, was like such a negative force in my life because like if I didn't take 10,000 steps per day, I would immediately mark myself as a failure. It also took an activity kind of similar to reading. It took an activity that I at one point in time did for enjoyment, and it just made it into like a goal fulfilling exercise. And I wasn't having fun walking. I was just thinking of how long do I have to walk to meet my target. I would advise my past self to make the self-improvement a little more qualitative, a little less quantitative. What I mean is like, instead of being like, I have to read 50 books in a year, I would say, I want to read books I enjoy continuously throughout the year. If I take a few days, a few weeks, a month off, that's fine. Doesn't matter. The question is, am I enjoying what I'm reading? So I feel like they're almost like two trifectas of lessons in this. We're kind of in the self-perfecting trifecta right now and how basically not to think about self-perfecting. And then we're going to kind of move into like a work and money trifecta after this. So my third in the first trifecta is is to do with music. The lesson is music should fundamentally make you feel something, and whatever that music that makes you feel something is good. If you like it, if it inspires you or makes you feel sad or happy or any emotion, really, it's good. And now for my example for this one, I am gonna have to use, you guessed it, the example of Taylor Swift. I remember being in my kitchen in college, like cooking dinner with my roommate with the radio on, and I would be like so much looking forward to the inevitable moment when Love Story would play. I would never tell anyone though that I enjoy Love Story by Taylor Swift. Like that was way too embarrassing. And like also I would never ever deign to listen to a Taylor Swift album. Like no. Instead, I would filter every bit of music that I decided to listen to through this rigorous but ultimately unwritten test of its indie credentials to assess it to be sufficiently under the radar to make me seem cool. And now the irony of this is too, like I never talked to anyone about my music taste. Like if the question would come up, oh, what kind of music do you listen to? I'd be like very evasive, like, oh, I don't know, just like whatever. Like I like a mix of things. Like, but then in the last year or so, as like Taylor Swift achieved this status of world domination, I decided like I was going to listen to a couple of her albums just to like see what all the fuss was about. And what I realized is that I liked them. I turn out to like a lot of Taylor Swift's music. And you know, it really does. Like a lot of her songs do indeed make me feel something. They, in many cases, inspire this very particular type of nostalgia that I absolutely love. I just wish I would have like been able to get on board sooner. Like not just with Taylor Swift, but with like any music that like I deemed to be kind of like below me in whatever like metric I was assigning. Like I just wish I would have like just listened to whatever I like, because honestly, like if I had had All Too Well, the Taylor Swift song when I was 22, I think my whole life trajectory could have been a little bit different. I think maybe I wouldn't have viewed myself as such a romantic victim because, hey, I would have had Taylor Swift right there alongside me. Okay, so now we're going to enter into the work and money category of these life lessons. And the first in the work and money category is going to be that money is a social construct, yes, but at the same time, it does make the world go round. And like what I mean when I say money is a social construct, it's basically just to say that, we only have monetary systems because we all collectively agree to have monetary systems. But at the same time, while acknowledging that money isn't real, I do wish that I would have known to be maybe a little more intentional in some of the decisions I made about money. For context, for background, I'm not from like a moneyed family in the slightest. And like my parents are pretty responsible about money. I, however, somehow in my 20s developed this incredibly, I'm going to call it cavalier attitude towards money, where I was just like, I'm going to spend whatever I want and I'm just going to live with the assurance that it will come to me someday. And like, if I were to trace the origin of this thought, like I think it came from the fact that like when I went to college, like basically like my undergrad years, like I basically ended up getting like all of my like tuition and room and board paid for through a combination of grants and scholarships, meaning like my parents didn't have to contribute anything and I didn't have to contribute anything to my education. I am in this weird position where like my like 18 to 22 years were like the most financially stable time of my entire life. Like I basically had money to do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. My living expenses were covered. And like what ultimately happened though was like I think though I kind of got a little too used to that. And I think I got a little too used to the idea that, oh, money will just come your way. You will just have your expenses magically covered somehow. No, like, no. So then once I finished this, like, financially amazing undergrad time, I decided to do a master's, then a PhD. I also decided to do them in the UK. And as an American student in the UK, I was only allowed to work for money 20 hours per week. And so not only did I like basically go into debt paying for my grad school programs, but I also was basically kind of just living like subsistence level for several years. Like I made enough money to like cover like my rent and food and stuff, but like I was saving nothing, like nothing. And it's like I've since, somewhat recovered. Like I do now have savings. I have like worked for several years post PhD. So I'm not like completely now irresponsible and I don't spend like wildly. I mean, also my only wild spending ever really has been on like education, but I think that maybe here the advice that I would give to my past self is to be a little bit more intentional about that education spending. Now, I'm not saying like I shouldn't have done the PhD program. I'm saying that I wish I would have like taken a step back before like diving headfirst into doing a PhD. And I wish I would have maybe just reflected on what I want out of the PhD program. Like, do I want an academic job? Is that my absolute dream? If so, the PhD would absolutely have been like a great thing to do. What I didn't contemplate was the fact that when I was like going into this and making the decision to spend all this money on a PhD, I wasn't really fully cognizant of the fact that I was doing a PhD really more for the experience, for the ability to live abroad, for the ability to, yes, learn something, to learn about research, but I didn't fully think through the fact that I could have perhaps lived abroad via other means. I could have done maybe kind of on-the-job training in something research related, and that maybe would have like led me to a better place. Because where I am right now, I am, as I've mentioned several times now, I think 34, and I've gotten to this point where I would really like to be able to, I mean, this sounds so like, nonsensical, but I would love to be able to like buy even just like a cheap house. Like a cheap house. Like I would be like thrilled to be able to buy like a cheap house that needs like a ton of repairs, but like that would just be like my place, my like stability and security for the future. And I can't do it. It can sometimes feel like a trade-off where like I basically just did whatever I wanted in my 20s so that now I can kind of do nothing I want in my 30s. And like that's melodramatic, but it does sometimes feel that way where I'm like, I am financially stymied now because I did not make proper choices when I was younger. And now I kind of have to like deal with the consequences of that. And like it's not a tragedy. It's fine. Like I know that also there are like wider socioeconomic reasons why a lot of people my age cannot like afford to buy homes, and I know that I'm not like alone in this, and I know that even people who made better financial choices like also can't afford to buy homes, and there's a bigger issue here. I think also like that's what I need to say. It's not all about individual choice, but like I think if I were to like re-advise myself, I would just say like maybe like cool it on the degree programs. And now we're coming close to the end, like finally. The next one is about work. And like this is all of what I've learned about work kind of post PhD. But like basically I would say that don't expect to find fulfillment through a job you do for an employer. If you are one of those people who does get that, great. But like for me personally, like it would have been nice if you had detached yourself from that expectation a little sooner. Because I really did enter into, I guess, the workforce when I finally did enter into the workforce, thinking that whatever I did for a job would basically provide me my source of fulfillment. And what I learned is that not only did it not, I don't think it could. You know, like no job that I was going to do for someone else was going to like allow me to like express my perspectives and perceptions in the way that I think I truly wanted to do. Like it wasn't going to really give me the opportunity to like write creatively, which is what I wanted to do. Like it just wasn't going to give it to me. But I still like put so much hope in the fact that it could. But basically I just fell into this capitalist conditioning where I believed that if I put in the effort and I found a good employer, found a good job, like moved up in an organization, like had success, if my boss liked me, that would basically be enough for me in life, and that would be my source of satisfaction, and I could basically just like live out the rest of my days doing that, and I would be fine and happy. And it turned out that just like couldn't be the case. It wouldn't be the case. I had to figure out how to find that fulfillment through other means, through what I do for myself. That's what ultimately gives me fulfillment. But I still like spent all these years just like basically, you know, pursuing an ideal kind of career. I mean, and that was also part of like the academic program thing, was I thought that if I do these academic programs like for all that time, that it's going to bring me to a career ultimately that I really want to have, and that'll be really like desirable, and also that'll give me like a certain status in the world, and other people will envy me probably, or blah. I just wish that I would have like not invested so much time in kind of that idea of working for someone else, and I would have invested more time and again figuring out what I want to do. And I would have like thought, okay, like what at the end of the day gives me joy, and how can I like find a job that will allow me to survive, but that also allows me to like do the thing that I most enjoy. So like, how do I find a job that doesn't take up all of my time, that like doesn't require me to like work long hours and like meet all these targets that are completely arbitrary ultimately? Like, how do I find a job that is just like more suited to living life and having a good quality of life? And I mean, for me, I think so far that answer is to do freelance work. I know that's not for everyone. I know freelance doesn't necessarily give the security. And as someone who just talked about financial security for like 10 minutes, I'm like, you're gonna like get on here and advocate for freelancing? Like that's feels like no one did learn any lessons, and maybe that is true. I'm like half tempted to like make a second video and like, here are all the things that I hope myself in my 40s doesn't have to come back and, you know, retroactively tell myself in my 30s. But hey, who knows? I may have to make that because I feel like I'm still making tons of mistakes. Shall we get on to number 6? So this final one is make the video, post the essay, start the novel, just do it. I really started watching YouTube in earnest when I was like 22, and like just became like completely enamored with like vlogging. I thought it would be so much fun to do it myself. And like I even went so far when I was 24 to like make a video, or a couple videos actually, and like edit them, and kind of like I had fun with it. But you know, when it came time to actually maybe post it, I just lost my nerve. I just couldn't do it. And like it took me a full decade after that to get to the point where I actually could just like post a video and come on here and just like be vulnerable, I guess, and like open myself up to any manner of potential criticism. But I did. I decided to. And likewise with writing, I kept my writing very secret from everyone. I really regret that. Actually, like, I don't necessarily think that anything I'm saying in this, apart from maybe the thinking I'm really ugly thing, I don't necessarily regret all of this, because I think it's led me to like understand more about myself. But I do regret not having started sooner. I mean, but at the same time, I guess like things happen for people at different ages, and I certainly like still like watching people who are like, you know, my own age and older. Like I don't think that there's any like cutoff date for like starting something. So maybe this is the right time, and maybe this is the time when I'm like ready to put my ideas out there. I don't know. I do sometimes wish though I would have just started in my 20s. And I know that just start isn't like groundbreaking advice. I did not claim to be wise. I claimed to have thoughts and stuff. So maybe though, like just start is what someone else needs to hear. And I hope that if someone else hears this and they're contemplating starting and they're maybe in their 20s or maybe not, I hope that, hey, maybe like this is just that like final piece of reinforcement that you need to just start. I really don't have any kind of outro or closing thought planned. That's what I need to stop doing, is like apologizing for everything. That's what like I think, you know, is going to become one of the major lessons that I wish I'd learned in my 30s, is to just stop apologizing. Like, I mean, even now, like I find myself like tempted to like apologize for the lighting, as always. I also feel the need to like apologize for the way my hair looks, for the fact that my makeup is probably melting off, for the fact that I'm pretty sure I like scratched my face in the course of making this video and now have a red mark on my forehead that, I mean, I know it's annoying me. I don't know if it's annoying anyone else. And but I need to stop apologizing. So I guess I don't care if anyone liked this. No, but I really hope you did.